Let's talk about the US markets now. Wall Street ended Wednesday's trading session, snapping a massive two-day rally with the Dow Jones 42 points lower, the S&P 500 down 7 points, and the Nasdaq Composite slipping 27 points. Stock futures, though, ended higher. CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
It looked like Wall Street would be heading for a third straight day of gains as we saw a pretty nice bounce from last week's 2022 lows, but a late rally fizzled and the major averages ended the day with small losses. The Dow ended down more than 0.1%, the S&P with a loss of 0.2%, and the Nasdaq falling about 0.25%. Despite Washington's call for OPEC to keep pumping oil, OPEC and its allies have agreed to cut oil production by 2 million barrels a day in response to the steep decline in crude prices that we've seen in recent months. Now, the actual cut is likely about half that, given some producers really haven't been hitting their official targets, but it was still enough to send crude higher today, with WTI at about $88 a barrel, and that could feed into higher prices at the pump, which is not going to help the fight against inflation. That's the action from the U.S. market. Now back over to you in Mumbai.
Okay, that is all the action coming in from the US markets. In fact, let us get you some important market opinion coming in from Ed Yardeni of Yardeni Research.
They are trying to catch up to the inflation curve, but they've done quite a bit. I mean, since March, we've had 300 basis points in increases in the Fed funds rate. And I think what the Fed is really not paying enough attention to is that the strong dollar and QT2, this quantitative tightening program they're on, they're equivalent to probably 50 basis points each. So I think there's, when you look at the whole package of monetary tightening, they've already done quite a bit. And I think it would make sense for them to do maybe one more 75 basis point hike in early November, but then pause and just see how this whole thing plays out.
Okay, with that, we move on to the final update on our global market wrap. European markets also ended lower on Wednesday, with the French CAC over 50 points lower, the German DAX sliding over 1%, and the British FTSE closing over 30 points lower. The British pound was under pressure after UK Prime Minister Liz Truss said cutting taxes was the right thing to do morally and economically, doubling down on her debt-funded economic reforms. Business activity in the Eurozone contracted more than expected, signaling a recession. All right, that's the global market action, but how will these overnight cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in to tell you just that. We have with us today Ekta, Surbi and Mangalam to tell you what the stocks will be like, the F&O action and the trade setup as well. Ekta, let me come across to you first. What is the market setup looking like today?
Thanks, Sonal, for that. Well, yes, just a quick recap about what took place before the holiday, which was on Monday and Tuesday. On Tuesday, in fact, the positive global cues lifted the markets. We had the rupee, which appreciated as well. It closed at around 81.52, and it was a second consecutive buy figure when it came to the FIIs. The FIIs net bought around almost 600 crores in the cash market on Monday, and then they followed it up with around 1300 crores plus on Tuesday. DIIs also net bought around 945 crores on Tuesday's session. Now for today, the US rally, it seems to have fizzled after 2 days of gains. The US markets closed lower after what was a volatile session of trade, and the private payrolls data was at around 208,000. This was better than estimates of around 200,000. So maybe the street was fearing that, the economic recession is, or the impact of rate hikes is still not here as much as they would like. We also have the non-farm payrolls data on Friday in the US, which will be watched quite closely. For Europe, it seems as though there is some recessionary trend which actually weighed down on the market. So the PMI for September came in at a 20-month low of around 48.1. Now, the other thing to focus on is crude prices, because that's jumped up to $93 per barrel because OPEC Plus is deciding to cut oil production by 2 million barrels per day. So net, that should be a negative for the Indian markets, but as of now, the markets are brushing off a lot of the concerns, and it's indicating a positive start for us. Asia is currently mixed, and China is closed. A couple of other cues. JP Morgan has indicated that India continues to remain on the index watch base on investor feedback. We have a lot of stock specific action to watch out for in today's trading session as well. Back to you.
We do. Ekta, thank you so much for joining us with all those updates. So let's talk about stocks then. Surbi will list out the stocks that will be in focus today. Surbi.
Few stocks to watch out for today, mostly companies with Q2 business update. The first one is Bajaj Finance, where their new loans have declined sharply on a Q-on-Q basis by nearly 8.1%, and the AUM growth has been best in 11 quarters. The next is AU Small Finance, where the deposits have seen nearly a 50% growth on a year-on-year basis, and the AUM was up 42%. RBL Bank, it was a mixed Q2 update where deposit growth has been weakest in 8 quarters and advances growth has been the best in 11 quarters. Next is Z Limited, where the Competition Commission of India, CCI, has approved the merger with Sony. JSW Energy, where the company has signed an MOU with the government of Maharashtra to set up a hydro pumped storage project. IEX has also released their monthly update for the month of September, and it has registered a 5% volume growth on a month-on-month basis at 8,160 million units. And lastly, Godrej Consumer Products has released their Q2 update, where on a consolidated level, they expect a mid-single-digit sales growth, but on a profitability front, they expect a mid-teen decline.
Okay, all these stocks in focus today. And finally, Mangnam is joining in with all the cues from the F&O space. Hey, Mangnam.
Good morning. So, to start things off, we come back from a holiday, so we have to adjust the SGX Nifty from Tuesday futures close. And if you just take a look at the SGX Nifty, it's a start of almost 140 points in the green. So that's good news for our market. The question is what happens from here, because on Tuesday's trading session, both the FIIs and the DIIs ended up buying in the cash market, and that resulted in the big uptick that we saw. Adding that to that uptick was a fair amount of short covering. The FI has bought almost 3,100 crores in index futures, where they added around 5,000 longs, but importantly, they covered 30,000 short contracts, as a result of which from 13%, the FII long position has inched to almost 19%. And that's not all. Remember, on Tuesday, I said that they've written almost 1,20,000 calls. Well, they've gone ahead and covered 70,000 calls from that, and they've added 61,000 short puts, as a result of which we are expecting some support at lower levels. They've also bought almost 1.5 times the number of calls than puts, so they are looking for some sort of upside. It is weekly options expiry today. We did see a fair amount of short covering in calls of 17,000, 17,100 and 17,200 strikes, and at the same time we saw a fair amount of writing at the 17,200 put and the 17,300 put. Importantly, now where we open is right in the middle of the congestion zone, where we have the 17,446 50-day moving average and 17,487 the 20-day moving average. The question is whether we sustain this gap up or that gets sold into. For the Nifty Bank, the level that you're looking at is 39,841, which is a few hundred points away from where we are right now in terms of a bit of a resistance. So let's keep an eye out on these levels. In terms of stocks, watch out for Z. A lot of long positions added on Tuesday when the stock rallied almost 7%, and then over the holiday we got the news.
Oh yes, we did. Thanks guys for joining us, for prepping us up for this trading day ahead, and we'll slip into a short break, and as Mangnam was saying, we'll talk about Z Entertainment. The CCI has approved the Z Sony merger, but with modification. We'll tell you more when we return. Stay tuned.